Who is Jack Spadaro? He's a man who's devoted his life to the safety of miners and the safety of people who live near mines. He's an engineer who, until recently, was head of the National Mine Health and Safety Academy, a branch of the Department of Labor which trains mining inspectors. But he lost that job last year after he blew the whistle on what he called a whitewash by the Bush administration of an investigation into a major environmental disaster.
I had never seen anything so corrupt and lawless in my entire career as what I saw regarding interference with a federal investigation of the most serious environmental disaster in the history of the eastern United States.
Corrupt, lawless, pretty harsh, huh?
I've been in government since Richard Nixon. I've been through the Reagan administration, Carter, Clinton. I have never seen anything like this.
What he's talking about is what he calls a government cover-up of an investigation into a disaster 25 times the size of the Exxon Valdez spill. It happened in October of 2000. 300 million gallons of coal slurry. That's the thick pudding-like waste from mining operations, flooded land, polluted rivers, and destroyed property in eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. The slurry contains hazardous chemicals, including arsenic and mercury.
It polluted 100 miles of stream, killed everything in the stream, all the way to the Ohio River.
Spadaro was second in command of the team investigating the accident. The slurry had been contained in this enormous reservoir called an impoundment, which is owned by the Massey Energy Company. One night, as this graphic shows, the heavy liquid broke through the bottom of the reservoir. It flooded the abandoned coal mines below it and roared out into the streams. Spadaro says the investigators discovered the spill was more than an accident. It was an accident waiting to happen. During the investigation carried out by Spadaro and his colleagues, it came out that there'd been a previous spill in 1994 right here at the same impoundment. The mining company claimed it had taken measures to make sure it wouldn't happen again. But an engineer working for the company said the problem had not been fixed, and that both he and the company knew another spill was virtually inevitable.
He said, we knew there would be another breakthrough.
We knew.
We knew. And I asked him how many people in the company knew. He said, well, at least 5 people.
So why didn't they fix it?
It would have been expensive to find another site, and I think they were willing to take the risk.
But from what you're saying, it wasn't a risk, it was a certainty.
It was a certainty.
It was a certainty, he says, because there was only a very thin layer of rock at the bottom of the reservoir. But that's not what the mining company had told the government.
They told the government there was a solid coal barrier at least 70, 80 feet wide between the mine workings and the bottom of the reservoir.
In fact, the barrier was less than 20 feet.
They were misrepresenting the facts.
What's the difference between misrepresenting the facts and lying?
They were lying. Yes, that's right.
And they knew that.
And they knew that. The company knew that. And I'm sorry to say, I believe some people within the government knew that.
David McAteer was Spadaro's boss when the disaster happened. He was head of the Mine Safety and Health Administration, which is called MSHA. And he says Spadaro was right, that his own regulators hadn't done their job.
I know they didn't do enough in terms of enforcement because the thing failed. That's the proof.
And you put together an investigative team?
We did.
Were you expecting that the report was going to end up fairly harsh?
Well, yes. Why wouldn't you expect that? This was a catastrophic failure. By the grace of God only did we avoid fatalities.
The report was going to be harsh, Spadaro says. The investigators were going to cite the coal company for serious violations that would probably have led to large fines and even criminal charges. But all that changed when a new administration took over and decided that the country needed more energy and less regulation of energy companies. The investigation into Massey Energy, a generous contributor to the Republican Party, was cut short.
The Bush administration came in, and the scope of our investigation was considerably shortened, and we were told to wrap it up in a few weeks.
When the Bush administration came in,
they cut it off. They did.
Ellen Smith publishes the country's only newsletter devoted entirely to mine safety and health. She's been writing about the mining industry for 16 years.
People I spoke with who were on the investigation team told me that they believed it was absolutely cut short, that they had more work to do, and that they were told to wrap it up.
Was anyone making it clear why they wanted the investigation wrapped up so quickly?
It appeared to me they thought we were getting too close to issuing serious violations to the mining company.
The new head of MSHA, a Bush appointee named Dave Larisky, was a former mining industry executive, and so were his top deputies. One day, Spadaro says, Larisky came into his office and insisted he sign a watered-down version of the report, a version that virtually let the coal company and MSHA off the hook.
He said, I'm in a hard spot here, and I need you to sign this report.
And you replied?
I said, just take my name off the report because I'm never going to sign the report.
Originally, your investigating team wanted to cite the company for how many violations?
8.
In the end, how many were they cited for?
2.
How much did the government end up fining the company?
About $110,000 in fines.
Your laughter signifies that this was not a lot of money for a mining company.
No, not for this mining company. It's the 5th largest mining company in the country.
The mining company, Massey Energy, declined to talk to us. Dave Larisky, the head of the Mine Safety and Health Administration, declined to be interviewed. So did his boss, Elaine Chao, the Secretary of Labor. But the Department of Labor has consistently stood behind the report. But Link Chapman, who lives in the path of that black slurry which flooded his property and terrified his 13-year-old daughter, insists the investigation was a whitewash.
I have absolutely no confidence anymore in any of our regulatory agencies.
That's why he added a second floor to his home, so his family wouldn't worry about being buried alive if there were another spill. A possibility, he believes, as long as there are hundreds of slurry impoundments in the mountains of Appalachia.
It's a terrible thing as a father when kids lay down at night and you tuck them in and they ask you, Dad, the slurry's not going to come out tonight, is it? And you have to tell them, I don't know that the slurry's not going to come out tonight.
3 years after the spill, there's still slurry on the Chapman's property, and you don't have to dig deep to find it.
This is coal slurry. Very nasty.
The Chapmans want to sell their house, but because of the slurry on the property, there aren't any buyers.
No one wants it. Basically, it's cost me everything that I have invested here, everything I've ever worked for all my life.
All Jack Spadaro has worked for in his life has been mine safety. So when he felt his new bosses were trying to sabotage the investigation, trying to get him to go along with a cover-up, he complained to the Labor Department's Inspector General. The Inspector General of the Labor Department decided to look into it, issued a report, and I'll quote from his report, said, "None of the allegations brought forward by Mr. Spadaro were substantiated." How do you respond to that?
That statement is a lie, is a flat-out lie.
I do not trust the IG report. So much information was withheld from the public.
Ellen Smith was shocked to see that about half of the Inspector General's report had been blanked out by the government.
If you look through this report, you will see huge black marks.
The whole page.
There are other whole pages.
How come?
They were withholding information that may or may not have proved Spadaro's allegations. And we will never know what that report says.
Do they do this when they issue a report? Do they black a lot of stuff out?
No.
Is this usual?
No, this is highly unusual.
And Spadaro says the unusual doesn't stop there. Remember, he was head of the Mining Academy. And when his new boss, Bush administration appointees came in, he says they doled out lucrative contracts for work at the academy to their friends. One contract for a training program was worth nearly $200,000. This is a sizable contract.
Yes.
Was it put out for bids?
No, it wasn't put out for bid at all.
How could they not put it out for bids?
They violated the law and they knew it.
MSHA denies violating the law, but Spadaro says they pulled it off with some clever bookkeeping. My understanding is what they did was, instead of asking for bids for a $200,000 contract, they divided them up into tiny little contracts.
That's exactly what happened. They did $1,025 contracts 180 times. They thought that no one would notice.
They were wrong. You've looked into this. What did you find?
I found no bid contracts. I found that contracts went out to the 2 deputy assistant secretaries for MSHA, to former business associates and friends. They did not go out for bid.
And the guy who blew the whistle, Jack Spadaro.
He is absolutely getting his life ruined.
One day last year, government agents went into Spadaro's office, went through his files, and locked him out.
They changed the locks on my door and still have not allowed me to return to my workplace.
Spadaro spends his days at home now. The government says he was removed from his job primarily for abusing his authority, failing to follow procedures, and also for using his government credit card without authorization. Spadaro denies all the charges.
There are cases upon cases of people who have had far more egregious charges than Jack Spadaro.
And didn't lose their jobs.
You have a guy in one of the regulatory agencies that actually wants to stand up for what's right, and because he rocks their boat, he gets thrown overboard.
Bring back Jack! These residents of Appalachia gathered in Charleston, West Virginia to demand that Jack Spadaro get his job back. Without Spadaro, they say, they're afraid there's no one left in government who will stand up for the residents instead of for the coal companies.
They think they can get rid of a man who has become a hero to the people of southern West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. We're not going to take this, and we want Jack back. Bring back Jack!
Jack is back. Sort of. MSHA officials recently told Jack he's not being fired. Instead, he's being demoted and taking about a $35,000 pay cut. He's also being transferred to the agency's Pittsburgh office, far from his family in West Virginia. But Spadaro says he has no plans to go anywhere except perhaps to court to sue the government.
I think that they thought they could simply roll over me and I would be gone and out of their way. And I'm going to fight them forever if it takes it.
Jack Spadaro has asked the Office of Special Counsel for whistleblower protection. They've agreed to investigate whether he was a victim of retaliation by MSHA officials. And the Labor Department's Inspector General is looking into whether or not MSHA officials broke the law in awarding government contracts.